Welcome to Facts TV News, where everything is true. Toddler Jones in St. Catherine. A 2-year-old boy joined on Wednesday in Commodore District, Lindsay, St. Catherine. He has been identified as Anthony Richards. It's reported that the child was seen floating in an uncovered man-made fish pond in the backyard of his home. His mother attempted to administer CPR, but her efforts failed. The child was pronounced dead at Lindsay Hospital. Relatives say woman who drowned in St. Elizabeth had wandered off. A relative of a 56-year-old St. Elizabeth woman is suspected to have drowned in Thornton District near Silo on Sunday, saying the victim wandered off as her caregiver was preparing dinner on a wood fire. Relatives named the deceased as Rosemary Powell, a resident of Whitehall near a compound. Police had earlier reported or identified her as 55-year-old Desiree Powell, an apparent error in naming the woman. The relative, who asked not to be named, said the caregiver resorted to wood fire as she ran out of cooking gas. She was there cooking, the gas finished, and she went outside and put a wood fire. Powell, who complaining about her head, she caregiver told Powell to go inside, he said. He added that Powell wrapped her head and went to lay down. The caregiver was constantly inside and outside the house checking on her. The caregiver was then outside finish up when the rain started drizzling. She came inside and was calling, saying, "Miss Rose, your dinner is ready." When she looked on the bed, she didn't see her, he said. The relative said the caregiver raised an alarm in the community. The relative sought to clarify a police report on the incident, which said the caregiver left home and upon returning discovered that the woman was missing. An eyewitness basically saw when Miss Powell jumped into the river. A man apparently saw her body in the river and went to the house of the caregiver, said the relative. He said the caregiver broke down in tears. She started crying. She didn't expect that the lady would have gone outside the house and reached that far. It wasn't a case where she left her unattended. It wasn't a fault of the caregiver, the relative said. FSC intervenes in SSL employee fraud. The Financial Services Commission, FSC, the regulatory body for financial institutions in Jamaica, has frozen the business activities of Stocks and Securities Limited in light of SLL's exposure to positive fraudulent activities based on SLL's letter to the FSC dated January 10, 2023, and the implications for the solvency of the entity. FSS instituted the directions in pursuant to Section 81B of the Financial Services Commission Act. The directions impose strict reporting requirements on the entity and prevent the entity from disposing of any assets. Based on the FSC directions, SSL is barred from issuing funds to clients or accepting new deposits until permitted by the FSC. Taxi operators to decide how they will treat issue of outstanding traffic tickets, legal challenge being considered. A decision is expected to be made by public passenger vehicles operators on how they will treat the vexed issue of outstanding traffic tickets during a meeting. The Transport Operators Development Sustainable Services TODS said the group is considering various responses, including legal actions against the government and a withdrawal of service. TODS President Hector Newman said members of the PPV sector are angry at the seemingly uncurrent government, especially after the presentation made in Parliament by the National Security Minister on Tuesday. Speaking during a TODS virtual meeting last evening, January 11, Mr. Newman said various government ministers, to include those for transport and national security, had disagreed with the concerns of taxi operators because they are only intending on using the traffic ticket system to generate revenue. The concerns relate to claims that operators had already paid up their tickets, but the system still have them logged in as unpaid, and that there are no facilities to accommodate taxis in the corporate area, which resulted in operators being unfairly ticketed by traffic police. Mr. Newman noted that with the government already acknowledging that the ticket system has flaws, the operators have a strong legal challenge. Mr. Newman advised operators to not be in a rush to pay the fines, but instead await the outcome of deliberations on the legal challenge.
And we hope by midday today we can give a fulsome report on our meeting, which will follow immediate action. That is one of the toolkit in our toolbox to go to the High Court. So we are putting the pieces together now to make that presentation and by that time we can tell you who will be the legal counsel going forward. All I can say is we are in good hands. What we have gained so far from our legal expert is that we have a very strong standing if we go the route of challenge the government because they admitted that they failed to provide the technicalities, the infrastructure to ensure that persons don't have more than a certain amount of tickets. Persons who pay the tickets would not return. They failed. Don't be in any rush to go to the courts. Listen to what we have to say once we finalize our legal consultations. If you rush, then you could be on your own. If you wait on the queue from us, then we'll all go in this together. And when we go together, we are stronger. If you go back by yourself, easily broken. But I'm telling you, the government messed up and they are now going to pay the penalty. Hold it, operators, until afternoon. What they're rushing to do, as in 2010, come out with a massive public education. Go pay your traffic ticket, and they put up some grill and talking between some iron bars in the jail. If you don't pay, you're going to jail. Now watch that. Listen to what your leadership is saying, because they're not going to frighten us this time into pain. In 2010, I think they collected $900 million because they frightened the sector into pain.
Opposition says it still has not been contacted by government in relation to Vale Royal talks. Despite a commitment from Prime Minister Andrew Holness to hold Vale Royal talks with the opposition on issues including the state of emergency, opposition leader Mark Golding says he has not been contacted regarding the meetings. Speaking at the People's National Party PNP press conference on Thursday morning, Mr. Golding noted the critical need for discussions on the SOEs. Lamenting that he is yet to be contacted by the Prime Minister's office about the talks, the opposition leader is calling on Mr. Holness to convene the meetings urgently.
I note that the Prime Minister at his last press conference on the 28th of December indicated that he would be engaging in Vale Royal talks with us to discuss states of emergency. In response, I've said publicly that I thought that any such talks should have a much broader remit than just states of emergency and take into account other crime-related issues, such as how we deal with youths at risk in this country and the need for a comprehensive national program to address that, which is the source of much of our problems. Other issues around legislation focusing on enabling the police to build cases against persons who are known to be dangerous, violent criminals threatening life by taking them off the street and having a court-supervised process while the case is being built within a finite period of time. However, we're nearly halfway through January, believe it or not, and I have heard nothing from the Prime Minister's office about any Vale Royal talks. I think that this is something which needs to happen urgently, and I'm calling on the Prime Minister, pursuant to the commitment he gave the people, to let us convene those talks so we can try and find common ground.
Education Minister acknowledges need for more special education centers in Jamaica. Education Minister Favour Williams has acknowledged the critical need for special education centers across the country to provide institutional support to families of children with special needs. This as she welcomed a sponsorship agreement aimed at transforming the Santa Cruz Basic School in St. Elizabeth into a special education center. The agreement was signed on July 11 between the Education Ministry and the Digital Foundation. Speaking at the signing ceremony, Mrs. Williams explained that the Santa Cruz Special Education Center will provide, among other things, transitionary and assessment support to students with special needs or disabilities. Mrs. Williams said when the center becomes fully operational, representatives from the Ministry's Special Education Unit will provide technical support to teaching and administrative staff. She acknowledged the need for more such institutions across the country.
The Digicel Foundation will partner with the Ministry of Education and Youth with focus on the following: to provide a special education transitionary program, which means primary to secondary, ages 6 to 16 years old, for students with mild to severe intellectual and developmental disabilities. To establish a technical vocational education and training program to equip children with special needs to transition into the world of work. To provide additional assessment support for students across the region. To provide training opportunities for parents and caregivers of children with special needs that will improve access to support network and improve their level of care for their children. When I see other institutions of this kind in other parts of Jamaica, I'm really happy for it because I know the difficulties of getting into Kingston or finding some other area in order to have this facility available for children. So I extend congratulations to the team for coordinating this agreement that will be down to the benefit of our children.
Please remember to subscribe, like,